Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. Today is February 14th, 2024, and we do have some things to discuss today. If you like the things we've discussed and you're a new caller, I'd strongly suggest that you click the subscribe button so that you can listen to our weekly calls. Today's call will not be a long call, but I do have some information to share with you. I would suggest for newer callers to go to our call of last week because there was a lot of information there and there was a good Q&A in that call. So if you are, again, a new caller, if you listen to today's call and then go back and listen to last week's call, February 7th, I think you'll have a real good understanding of who we are, where we are in terms of the Iraqi dinar, and how we can assist you to protect that wealth. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or purchase of these currencies, but as rather substantial currency holders ourselves. We're sharing with you the information we believe to be most relevant. Of course, the most relevant piece of information would be the window for the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. Don't think that it can take much longer for this to occur. I'm going to explain it in a little bit more detail in the call. One other thing I'd like to mention, it seems that YouTube is up to their old tricks. For a while there, they were not posting our calls, and we resolved that issue. So they have a little new gig now. What they do is they don't put the calls in chronological order. So we do, of course, record the call, but then when people go to listen to the replay, they don't see our call up there as the most recent call, so they think for whatever reason there wasn't a call or it wasn't recorded. But if you scroll down, you'll find out that the most recent call may be 3 or 4 months back in history. So I refuse to believe that's an error. These outlets have extremely sophisticated algorithms, and so they wouldn't be making a boneheaded mistake like that unless it was done intentionally. It's unfortunate that the country is degenerated to the point where people that are in a position to allow free speech decide they prefer to censor it. When in history have the censors ever been the good guys? But that's another discussion. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into the information from today's call. If you've been kind enough to listen to our past calls, you will remember on my first call of this year in early January, I said not to buy the hype about the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar on or about January 15th. I went into some detail about that, but basically what I was saying was despite the progress with the monetary reform, there was still a lot of work that needed to be done in the banking and financial sectors. A lot of that work has been accomplished, and so we're getting closer to that day where we're going to go to the bank. So I want to touch on a few things that are of most interest. Of course, we know that Iraq was an attendee of the global summit that was in Dubai, as well as a meeting in Davos. Now, these meetings and the nations involved are not interested in closed nations operating at a program rate. These nations are only involved in international players. So the fact that Iraq is invited to these meetings tells you that these individuals believe that Iraq is going to be an international player. And based on Iraq in terms of its natural resources, its geopolitical involvement, its geographic location, and other reasons, Iraq is in a position to be certainly a big player in the Middle East, but I would argue a big player globally as well. Also, the ascension of Iraq to the World Trade Organization should be imminent. It seems that Iraq's most recent file and everything that they've done has pretty much checked all of the boxes. Now, the World Trade Organization, like a lot of these international agencies, and this is just my opinion, do not really operate on the up and up. For the World Trade Organization, I'll give you an example. Thanks to the assistance of the United States, China entered the World Trade Organization. And that, of course, catapulted China, which is, I hope, is what's going to happen with Iraq. But, of course, China was and remains a bad player. I'll give you two examples. First, they intentionally devalue their currency on the global market so that they can corner international trade. And second, they have routinely and flagrantly violated national and international intellectual property laws. They're thieves in the night. They spend so much time trying to infiltrate other nations, trying to steal whatever intellectual property they can steal. Anything they can do, they will do. They're cheaters. They just are. But that's the situation. Now in Iraq, what we're witnessing is the transition from basically a socialist, centrally managed economy to a private sector, free market economy. And they're moving fairly rapidly given, what a Herculean task that is. This, of course, would also require that they come out of a program rate. Iraq has consummated multiple international contracts for their infrastructure, which include their electric grid, water systems, road systems, new cities, and, of course, despite the fact that they have increased substantially the production and sale of oil, they still have only scratched the surface. So they're receiving a lot of assistance in the oil industry for the four pillars or four phases of oil industry, they being exploration, extraction, refinement, and distribution. Now, it makes absolutely no sense for the folks at Dubai, for the folks at Davos, for all of the nations, and I think there's some 57 companies in some 20-some nations, the BRICS nations, for an example. Makes no sense for any of these individuals to enter into all of these multi-billion-dollar contracts with Iraq if Iraq remains in a program rate. Because despite the fact that Iraq has over $100 billion USD in its reserve, that's not even enough money to fund their deficit, their budget, let alone these contracts. Therefore, in my opinion, not only are all of these international agencies, countries, and central banks entering into contracts with Iraq with the assumption that they will come out of a program rate. They've entered into these contracts with Iraq because they have a pretty good idea what that rate is going to be, or at least what it will fall at. So let's talk about that. This, again, is my opinion. The parameters for me on where their rate will eventually fall is between 322, which was the rate of the Iraqi dinar when it went into the program rate, and $4.85, which is the Basel IV extrapolated rate. So if we've got a floor of 322, and again, the country is not only in much better shape than it was at the time, but we've had 20 years of inflation. So 322 could be a point of beginning. I see no way where they end up at 322. Kuwait's at 345, and Kuwait, the wealth of Iraq dwarfs Kuwait. 485 seems like a reasonable number given the known natural resources of Iraq and their ability now to bring those resources to market, which is how Basel IV compliance works. But I don't think it would come out at that rate. But I do think it's not overstating it. As a matter of fact, I think it's a conservative estimate to say that we can expect the Iraqi dinar at $4. Now, the Kuwaiti dinar, which I think it ended up around 326 if I recall, but it went up over 7 after it was reinstituted before it dropped back down. So actually a lot of people lost money on the Kuwaiti dinar because they were buying it at $4, $5, $6, and $7, only to see it back at $3.26 in a matter of weeks. The same thing could happen with the Iraqi dinar. Timing is everything. But given everything we know, it seems to me that $4 is a reasonable rate to expect for the Iraqi dinar. Now, what that would also mean is that the Iraqi dinar is got more value against the U.S. dollar than any currency globally. But if you know the underlying natural resources of Iraq, its geopolitical location, the fact that the two superpowers, China and the United States, are involved and very interested in doing business with Iraq, $4 per dinar, again, seems like a reasonable number. Now, when is this going to happen? I wish I could give you a date and a rate. I think one of the reasons there's been kind of a lull lately, on one hand, it's a good sign because it probably means that they want to cut the speculators out by sort of dropping it on us without notice. And we've discussed in the past, I've said what I thought was going to happen was they were going to go dark for a while before it popped. And, of course, in my view, that's kind of where we are right now. But what we are getting is the information about all of the contracts domestically and internationally that Iraq has consummated. So, again, there's no way these things can be funded at a program rate. The math just isn't there. So that's why I'm very hopeful that this thing is going to be over soon. Now, that might mean that time is running out for individuals interested in getting their affairs in order and where Trusts Unlimited is concerned with establishing their family asset protection trust. There are a number of benefits that this trust will provide. But at this point, despite the fact that we've been marketing this trust for nearly 15 years exclusively to dinarians, what we've witnessed happening in this country in the last 3 years makes it as important as ever for all American citizens to understand the benefits of establishing family trusts and protecting their wealth. We've seen the destruction of our borders north and south. We've seen the destruction of the value of the U.S. dollar through the printing of anywhere from $7 to $8 trillion in the last 3 years. We've seen our allies globally basically concerned about whether we are a reliable ally. We see our enemies basically rubbing their hands together, knowing that the United States is as weak as it's ever been probably since the end of World War II. And unfortunately, we know that people in Washington running the country right now are either too stupid to understand what they've done or they're doing it on purpose. I happen to believe it's the latter. But very basically what we've been told, and actually we've been gaslighted. We hear that word a lot, gaslighting. What does that word mean? Actually, it goes back to a film noir movie that was filmed in 1944 starring Charles Boyer and Ingrid Bergman. And the reason they used the term gaslight is he was trying to convince his wife that she was crazy. One of the things he did every night was to turn the gas lights down just slightly so the room got darker and darker. But he acted as though there were no problems. So his wife kept thinking, well, I don't understand. I can't see. It's dark in here. And he'd look at her like, what's wrong with you? There's nothing wrong. That's exactly what the federal government's doing. The border is secure. Inflation is dropping. People are making money. The economy's on the march. The market's doing great. Joe Biden's a genius. Everything's wonderful. We're winning in Ukraine. The worst thing this government's done, and there's two things. One is to allow approximately 9 to 10 million unvetted individuals into this country, most of whom are single men between the ages of 18 and 21. The estimate now is between 20 and 25 million Chinese single men have come into this country. Now, you just can't leave China. You can't say, well, I'm taking a trip. I'm going to take a trip around the world. I'll be back when I'm back. You can't do that. If those men left China, because China allowed them to leave. So this is really a problem for us. And the other problem, I don't even know if I want to go there, really. That should be enough. That should be enough. The other problem is we're not sure who the loyalties of this government are at this point. Are they loyal to our Constitution, or are they globalists who want our sovereignty subordinated to these other international agencies? Well, let's take a look at what they're trying to do, because we hear, and this is, again, gaslighting, saving our democracy, we're saving our democracy. But what are they trying to do? First of all, we're not a democracy, we're a constitutional representative republic. But what are they doing? Well, we know they're involved heavily in election interference. It cannot be denied at this point. We know they want to stack the Supreme Court. We know they want to end the Electoral College. We know they want to end the Senate filibuster. And they've made it abundantly clear that they want to either amend or repeal the First, Second, Fourth, Fifth, and 10th Amendments. That's not saving our democracy. That's destroying the republic to create a one-party social democracy. I think the word Obama used to use was a little cleaner, fundamental transformation. Why would you want to fundamentally transform something that you love? Why would you do that? Or that's something that you believe in? Well, you wouldn't. This is the situation. This is where our trust comes into play. Not just if you're a denarian, but if you're an American citizen. So what are the benefits of this trust? When I pick through these things, think of them in terms of you as a person that holds currencies, or you as an American citizen that basically just wants to be left alone. They want the federal government to mind their own damn business and let us live our lives in peace and security. Benefit number one, privacy and anonymity. That's because all the assets in the trust are sealed, and the general public will have no knowledge of your net worth or your actual holdings. Not because you've done anything wrong, because it's none of their damn business. Second benefit, avoid IRS scrutiny. In the case of the currencies, if you're holding these currencies in direct title when they revalue, IRS is going to do a 6-year audit because of the magnitude of this revaluation. However, those currencies are in trust. There's only about a 15% chance of an IRS audit, because the IRS likes to go for the low-hanging fruit. And why would they want to audit a sophisticated trust? But even if they decide to audit your trust, they can't do a 6-year audit. Why? Because the only taxable event within the trust is going to be the revaluation itself. Third benefit, gifting. By gifting pre-RV currencies to family and friends through the trust, you not only avoid the federal gift tax, but because you've gifted to them through the trust, you will have control of the post-RV proceeds. There are situations where you want to gift individuals, but you know gifting them a large lump sum would be a bad idea. However, with the trust, once again, you control the post-RV proceeds and avoid the federal gift tax. Fourth benefit, by establishing this trust, you're going to avoid probate and the federal estate tax. By avoiding probate, that means no one knows what was in your estate, who your heirs were, and how much they each stand to inherit. Now, the federal estate tax can be as much as 65% of your estate, in excess of $12 million. But if your assets are in our trust package, the federal estate tax is zero. This means that no one knows what was in your estate, no one knows who your heirs were, no one knows how much they inherited, and they get 100 cents on a dollar and avoid 65% federal estate tax. Then there's the asset protection benefits, both pre- and post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust will allow you to avoid something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. Simply put, this is what it means. As an example, you purchase 10 million dinar for $10,000. You transfer the currencies to our trust. Those currencies, and let's be conservative, subsequently revalue for $1. So that's $10 million in your trust. Can you be sued for $10 million? No. You can only be sued for $10,000. Why? Because that's all the currency was worth when you transferred it out of title. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as a limited liability stop loss. This protects you from future bad acts after you've acquired this wealth. This protection is accomplished through a strategy referred to as segregation of assets, meaning that each of your assets goes in a separate subtrust. So if any of those assets are ever involved in litigation, it's only that asset that would be involved. All of your other wealth and assets are in these separate subtrusts, which under the law are separate legal persons or entities not involved in the litigation. So this is why you would establish this trust package. But there's another reason to establish it. That's because we have a government that's trying desperately to control your lives. They're not patriots. They do not believe in the Constitution. They do not believe that these inalienable rights exist, but they can't get around them. Despite their efforts, they have failed time and time and time again. The Constitution has stood the test of time, and hopefully it will continue to do so. But by establishing this trust, you are basically ensuring that all of the Bill of Rights and all of the rights that it imparts to each of you as an American citizen are being protected. And once again, you live your life in peace and prosperity, and the government is barred from an illegal, unconstitutional intrusion into your affairs, both personally and financially. Now, our trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust that will hold assigned currencies pre-RV and financial assets like bank accounts and investment accounts post-RV, one optional gift subtrust, which again you would only establish if you wanted to gift currencies to family and friends and control the post-RV proceeds, and then 8 additional standard subtrusts to hold things like homes, cars, boats, etc. This was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we utilized for our more affluent clients prior to our involvement with the denarians. But once we decided to market this trust to denarians, because we understood that the average denarian is a middle-class person who now is going to have the daunting task of managing a substantial amount of wealth, we knew that this trust package would be invaluable to you, even though we established this before this current administration was in there doing everything they can to put the squeeze on the middle class. And it's an old tactic. How do you squeeze the middle class? You squeeze the middle class with taxes and inflation. By the way, with regard to inflation, we keep hearing a lot about how inflation has gone down. Inflation is a compounding issue. In other words, they're patting themselves on the back because they're saying inflation has gone from roughly 4.5% to 3.5%. First of all, that's all crap. Inflation rate probably went from 15% to 12%. They cook the books. They don't give you the real numbers. But it's cumulative. In other words, if it's just 3% this year, that's on top of what it's been for the last 3 years. Even by their numbers, compounding the inflation rates between 12 and 15%. You're paying 12 to 15% more for everything than you were 3 years ago. And it's probably more like 25 to 30%. So they're basically squeezing the middle class. Another reason they've opened the borders is they want a large, huge underclass that they can control. So this is the situation we find ourselves in. However, if you establish this trust, you're going to protect your wealth from litigation. You're going to protect your wealth from government confiscation. You're going to be able to accumulate that wealth. You're going to be able to control that wealth. You're going to be able to pass that wealth on to your family, and there's nothing the federal government can do about it because it's black letter law right there in the Constitution and in the Bill of Rights. So they can talk a good game, but they lose time and time and time again in the courts because the Constitution says what it says, it doesn't say what it doesn't say, and all their pretend little games won't change any of that. Now, as I said, We've been able to reduce the cost of this trust from $6,000 to $10,000 all the way down to $3,000. There are several ways you can pay for that. Pay us up front. We'll discount the price further to $2,500. That's not possible. We even have a deferred payment arrangement. Make an initial payment of $525, which would basically offset our out-of-pocket costs just to produce and deliver your trust package to you. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the Iraqi dinar revalues globally, any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. So with a deferred payment arrangement, anyone that has currencies and understands the need for getting their affairs in order and their trust in place pre-RV should be in a position to afford to do so. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your card would actually be substantially less than $100 a month you pay under our deferred payment arrangement. But we will work with you in whatever method works best for you. So given where we are right now in this country, given where we are right now in Iraq and the monetary reform, banking reform, and financial reform, now is probably the best time in your life to make sure that you have a family asset protection trust package that's going to protect you, your wealth, your privacy, your anonymity, and passage of that wealth to your family. There is no better time to do that than now. Now I'm going to go to the Q&A here in a moment. Let me get that going here. And while I'm waiting for any potential callers, I strongly suggest you, if you're interested in the things we've discussed, you contact us to get our initial no-obligation package. You can certainly go to our website if you want to learn more about us. That's Trusts with an S, Unlimited LLC.com. If you'd like to order our initial no-obligation package, now it does contain everything you need if you wish to proceed. Let me say that again. It does contain everything you need if you wish to proceed, but you're under no obligation to do so. You can review the package, contact us if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you. You can order that package by email or phone. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimited LLC at gmail.com. That's trusts with an S, unlimited LLC at gmail.com, or our phone service, which is 307-274-4122. That's 307-274-4122. Well, we do have some callers in the queue. Our first caller today is area code 208. That's 208. Go ahead.
Hi, Jim. It's Tim from Idaho. Thanks for all that you do, by the way.
Thank you, sir.
You bet. Hey, so we purchased your trust about, it was actually over a year ago, but literally we just had multiple things go on, deaths and actually funerals and illness and just a lot of life getting in the way. So I actually have not enacted it. I shelved it after the initial review, and that's been over a year probably. And so I haven't really looked at it since then, but I think we're ready to do it. But I don't know exactly where to start. I don't remember. I don't remember seeing a checklist that you had or anything. So, is there a checklist to get rolling?
You know what I'm writing your number down, Tim. I'm going to give you a call after this call. We're going to pull your trust up, and we're going to see exactly where you are. Okay.
Okay.
Is the phone number is the phone number here the number? Well, I'll call the number that's on here. I'm not going to repeat the number, but it's the area code 208. I will give you a call after this call, and we'll discuss that.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Yes, sir. Okay. Our next caller is area code 209. That's area code 209. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning, Jim. This is Sheila, Oklahoma. Hey, I have a quick question. At the top of the hour, and maybe I missed your response to this, but you had mentioned that you felt that this was going to happen soon as far as the reevaluation, reinstatement. I know that you don't know a date. Nobody does. However, what indications in the market are happening, and what is your gut telling you on a time frame? Is this like 1 month, 6 months, a year?
Well, I would be shocked if it wasn't done within 60 days, possibly even 30, only because they had the meeting in Davos. They had the meeting in Dubai. They're on the verge of membership to the WTO. And their citizens since January 1st have only been able to operate with the dinar in a program rate, meaning they have no purchasing power. I just can't see. It's just like being underwater. Eventually, you got to come to the surface or you're going to drown. That's where they are financially. They can't continue to allow their citizens to have no currency to exchange for necessary goods and services. So, anything's possible, of course, but 30 to 60 days, if not sooner. It just makes no sense to me that they're consummating all these international contracts and, again, starving their people without a valuable currency. So, I'm hopeful this thing will be done, like as I said, 60 to 30, and I would hope within 30 because, their citizens are going to be in the streets. They're going to be marching in the green zone. They're not going to be able to put up with this. They're being told repeatedly, anytime now, hang on to your currency. It's going to have real value. And I think we've gotten finally done with all the monetary reform. Now we're in the banking and the financial stuff. That's more international. So, that's just my view. I can't give you a date and a rate, but I'm saying 30 to 60 days tops.
Okay. And all that being said, there have been a lot of stories in, the truther world with bank stories and people going into banks, and, some banks are saying it's a scam. Other banks are saying, yes, they know what's coming. My concern is, the status and of banks. Is there a possibility that we could revalue, put our monies in a bank and, only be covered by the FDIC limits, and it basically go insolvent? Is there any concerns or fears for that? Do we just move quickly? Absolutely.
That's one of the things I say, and it's in also for those that get our trust now, they get something called the exchange protocol. It's difficult. A lot of people haven't ever done any negotiating in their life, and here they're sitting in a bank with 5 million dinar, and they probably wore a diaper to get in there because they're so nervous and they're negotiating. This is their life. I mean, this is money. And one of the things that we say is do not let them put a 10 or 21-day hold on your money. You want to get it out of there as quickly as possible. And one of the things people should be exploring is, okay, where else am I going to put the money? To me, banks only do two things, provide liquidity and convenience. I'm not interested in their trust services. I'm not interested in their asset management services. I just want the liquidity, and I want to put the money somewhere else. So, that is a real concern. And I probably shouldn't say this. I've become a little not jaundiced. What's the word?
Jaded?
Yes. Jaded with this bunch in Washington right now. If someone told me, they got a plan, they're going to let all these denarians go in there, put their money in the bank, and then the banks are going to fail, I wouldn't put it past them. I really wouldn't put it past them. What they're doing to the middle class right now, they're crucifying the middle class with taxes and inflation. Why they're trying to put the squeeze on us, so why they want us. Frankly, the Iraqi dinar could have revalued 10 or 12 years ago, and the Obama administration, along with Maliki, shut it down. They're trying to grow government. And they don't need 10 million new millionaires who want lower taxes and smaller government. So,
right.
Their problem is they can't. Go ahead.
I was going to say my goal is to invest in real estate and tangible assets like gold and silver. Is there anything else that you would suggest? Where would we put money and try to do it quickly so we don't have a lot?
Investing in real estate's a good idea, but it's a little cumbersome, and it's difficult for people that don't have an experience with it, and it's illiquid too. What I would suggest is something called a REIT, REIT, small s, Real Estate Investment Trust. It's like a mutual fund, but they invest in real estate, residential, commercial property. There's different types of REITs. They pay 5, 6, 7% dividend, and the money's liquid. So you're invested in real estate, you're out of the banks, you're getting a decent rate of return, and you still have liquidity.
Wow. Okay. I was unaware of that. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Okay. Take care. Our next caller is area code 615. That's 615. Go ahead.
Hi, Jim. This is Bill in Nashville. How are you today?
Okay. Bill, I got a couple of Bills. I think I know which one this is, but is this Bill the banker?
I hate to admit it, but formally, yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't.
Yeah. Thanks for putting me on the spot.
Bill's okay, folks. He's all right. He's on our side.
but I got smart enough to become a regulator of banks, and I found it was easier to ask the questions than to have to answer them.
Well, that's true in all aspects of life.
Yeah. Hey, it's kind of curious. A thought that occurred to me is that we go to the bank, we turn it in, and it's going to come out at some rate, and then it's probably going to appreciate, and it's going to probably drop down, as you've indicated, which was the case with the Kuwaiti. That means to me that the banks and the government's going to make a lot of money if they write it up and sell it at the right time. Am I on track on that, or full of weeds?
Well, if the banks were so good at making money, they wouldn't be in so much trouble right now. Although there are structural reasons for that. What happens, I like to analogize the currencies with the IPO, which happens, a new stock comes out or a currency revalues. So a lot of people all of a sudden hear the hubbub and they buy. That's velocity. It's not based on the actual intrinsic value of the asset. It's a synthetic situation where it's going up in value because the demand isn't based on reality. It's just hearsay, and it's the crowd moving in that direction. So the smart money, I mean, you'll see guys, they'll go in and they'll initially buy something and then they'll short it because they know it's going to go up, it's going to go back down, so they make money in both directions. But that's not who the denarian is. And so I say, don't play games. Don't, let's say the dinar comes out at $3.50, and people say, well, you know what? I'm going to hold off. I'm going to wait till it goes to $4, or I'm going to wait it goes to $5, or I'm just going to exchange 10% of my currency, and then I'm going to do it that way. First of all, you have tax issues you have to deal with. 988E2 of the Internal Revenue Code says, if the profit that you would realize from the exchange exceeds $200, you must pay the tax. So the taxable event is the increase in value whether you exchange the currency or not. That's your first problem. The second thing is if you're an average person making an average income, you have 5 million dinar, and you have a chance to go to the bank and walk out with $5, $10, or $15 million, just exchange the currency and don't look back. I know it's easier said than done, but money, it does funny things to people. And every weakness, every human frailty is exposed when you have situations like this. I'm going to bite hard, despite the fact I've been in the business. And I said this to my wife. I said, don't let me play games. I'm going to go to the bank. When I see a rate, if it comes out at, say, $3.25, even though, and I said on this call, I think it's going to go to 4. I think 4 is where it's going to land. That makes sense to me. I'm just going to exchange the currency, pay my taxes, get it out of the banks, get it out of the financial system, put as much of it in tangibles as I can, still have the liquidity I need to service, the cost of living each year. And I'm not going to look back because I was fortunate. I had the currency. I purchased the currency. I thought it was going to revalue 10 years ago, and it probably should have. So I've been in this game twice as long as I wanted to be, so I'm done. I can't do it. I've got children, I've got grandchildren, I've got things I want to do, personal things I've always wanted to do. I've always had an excuse or not the time to do it. Now I have because I have the money, and now I have the time. So I'm just going to involve myself in other things. And people I know what's going to happen. People are going to get into these pie-in-the-sky deals. They're going to lose the money, and they're going to be worse off than they never had it to begin with. I've been doing estate planning for 40 years. There's nothing more pathetic than seeing someone make a lot of money and lose it all overnight because of a boneheaded decision. So I'm just going on here, but I just know what's going to happen. A certain segment of these people are going to blow it all in a year. After holding currencies for 20 years, after doing without this and that, and then they reach for the gold, and they lose it all, and it's so unnecessary. So go to the bank, get a decent rate, invest wisely. That's my advice.
Well, I concur 100%. I've been on this planet longer than probably most of the people that are on this call today, and let me tell you that the greed will come back and bite you every single time. So don't be.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's tough. It's tough. All you have to look at the windfalls of people that win lotteries. The money's gone in 3 years. I mean, someone that was making $50,000 a year and he wins $27 million in a lottery and then loses it all in 3 years. Part of it's because he got swindled. Part of it is because he got in over his head with things he didn't know about. Part of it is because he lent money to family and friends and these other cockeyed business, and it's all gone. So that's another thing while we're on the subject. A lot of the people, that friends and family, have basically rolled their eyes over the fact that you have currencies, and they're the first ones going to be knocking on your door for money. You're going to have to swallow real hard and say no.
Yeah.
I can help you out in certain situations, but no.
Take care of your own first.
Yeah, and like I said, I have a wife, I have 7 children, I have 9 grandchildren and 1 in the oven. I got plenty of good places to put this money. So, and that's what I plan to do. Okay?
Thanks, Jim.
Sure. Take care. Bye-bye now.
You too.
Our next caller is area code 603. That's 603. Go ahead.
Hey, Jim, it's Don down in Florida. How you doing?
Hey, Don. How you doing? How's the weather down there?
It's a bit on the cool side today, but it was 80 over the weekend here in North Florida, and it's just beautiful.
Oh,
Not a cloud in the sky today, but it's nice. You ever come on down?
Well, I'm working my butt off right now. I can't get away from the phone, but that's another reason why I need this to be over, because I feel like I'm under house arrest. But
okay, I got 2 things for you. There
Sure.
you go. Anyway, I got 2 things for you. Number one, a group of us are getting together. We're going to start a movement. It's called Draft Jim George for President. How's that?
You don't want to go there. I'm going to tell you. This is a true story. Many years ago, I got a knock on my front door. It was Bob Dole when he was running for president. And the only reason he knocked on my door is because I had an op-ed article in a southern newspaper. He was in town campaigning, and he happened to be in the area, and he happened to be people that were showing him around were friends of mine. And he said, "Here's a guy that really ought to run." He showed him one of my articles, so he literally knocked on my door and asked me if I'd ever considered running for the House or the Senate. And we were having a bad day, and my kids were in the background screaming and yelling and running around. They were little kids. And I said to him, well, there's 2 reasons why I would never run. One is I got this small family, and I don't want to be away from them that much. And to be honest, this is what I said. And honest, the second most important reason is, I grew up in the D.C. area, and initially in my career, I was in the D.C. area, and I learned real quick, I can't put up with the BS, and I'm not good at turning the other cheek. So I'm not interested in Washington. And he basically said, got no argument with that, sir. So we shook hands, walked him back to the car, talked. He was a wonderful gentleman. I thanked him for his service. And that's as close as I ever got to even considering running.
I wonder where we'd be today if we had the speaker Jim George all these years.
Well, I appreciate the faith, but Washington is like money. It does funny things to you. I don't know if you ever heard the name Jacob Javits?
Yeah.
That name's from Jacob Javits was a senator, and he was the one that was running the Watergate hearings for Nixon. And I was in D.C., working in D.C. I was doing, without going into a lot of detail, work with structured settlements, and I was working with different law firms. So I was explaining something, and we got into this discussion about compound versus simple interest and structured settlements, and these guys looked at each other and said, we need you to talk to one of our seniors here at the firm. And they take me into, and there's Jacob Javits sitting there, old gentleman, pinstripe suit, white bow tie. I had to. They couldn't get him to understand the difference between simple and compound interest. So I'm sitting there with Jacob Javits explaining. Yeah, and my dad was a teacher. I learned early on, how to distill what is seemingly complicated into a very simple formulaic way. So I basically explained it to him, and I gave him a little quiz, a couple of things, and he got it right. He shook my hand, and I escorted myself out of the office. I walk out of the office, and the two people that had sent me in there were standing out there listening in and going, "Thank you, Mr. George."
There you go. Good job. Good job. Just a quick side question about the interest there. If someone put $500 in a simple passbook savings account 50 years ago and never did anything else, just left it there, what would they have today? Off the top of your head, what do you think?
I couldn't. It depends on the interest rate, but compound interest is a miracle, the way it works. Money doubles very, very quickly, even at a low percentage. The problem with most people is they aren't in a position to put money in the bank and leave it there for 50 years.
Yeah, obviously.
But the bank's okay with it, but most people are not.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Anyway, okay, I got you on that. Okay, my dinar question. We keep reading this stuff back and forth about deletion of the zeros. Is that coming off of the currency or off of the exchange rate? Can you clarify that? Because we hear both of them.
What all they mean, it's called a redenomination, or the slang for it is a lot. All they're saying is
a lot.
A 25,000 dinar note is now a 25 dinar note. A 10,000 dinar note is now a 10 dinar note. For the Iraqi citizen, that's what's going to happen. However, for the central banks, for the international hedge funds, and pursuant to Executive Order 13303 for the international individual investors such as ourselves, the 3 zeros will be recognized at the exchange. Now, one of the reasons they say, well, the dinar can't revalue is because of the money supply. And my response to that's twofold. Domestically, the deletion of the 3 zeros, again, means in Iraq, those notes are being reduced, a 25,000 to 25 note, a 10,000 to a 10,000 note. The inflation is going to affect us because when we go to the bank to exchange our currency, they're recognizing those 3 zeros. So if we have a 25,000 dinar note and it's worth $1 US, we're getting $25,000. But that note goes back to Iraq and it's retired. Now they're going to work out something with Iraq in exchange for retiring that note. But again, in Iraq, that note's retired. So that's what they mean by the deletion of the zero.
Okay, so what's to keep an Iraqi national, someone that say they live over there, from having a family member or a good friend buy a bunch of over here and exchange with the 3 zeros intact?
Nothing, and I'm sure all the Iraqi officials are trying to get as much of the money out of the country as they can. That's one of the reasons why they got the Paris Club involved in trying to collect all the currency that's floating around there internationally. They're not as concerned about people enriching themselves by getting the money out of the country as they are with nefarious players like Hamas, for example, getting a hold of the currency and exchanging it and having that money.
and the Malikis and stuff like that. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you answered that question. Because we keep reading, one of the guys on one of the dinar sites keeps saying the LOP will affect us also. That we'll have 25 instead of 25,000. And so that got people concerned.
If that's the case, then the scam, which everyone said the scam is that the Iraqi dinar will never revalue. But if, in fact, they pull that with us, they've lied to us repeatedly, and the scam is that that the LOP will affect us. I don't believe that's the case. It wasn't the case with the Kuwaiti dinar. I don't think it'll be the case with the Iraqi dinar.
Good. Okay. Excellent.
All right.
Okay, Jim. Well, hey, anytime you want to come down to Florida to get out of the cold, you're welcome. Come on down. We got a place for you.
I appreciate that, my friend. Believe me, I'd like to get out of here, but I think I'm stuck for the duration.
I got you. Okay, buddy. You stay safe up there. We'll talk to you later. Okay, bye.
Take care. Bye-bye now. Okay, our next caller is area code 954. That's 954. Go ahead.
Hi, Jim. How are you? I'm Hector Marin from Florida.
Yes, sir.
I have two questions, actually.
All right.
Yes. Okay. I agree pretty much with everything you said and what we said today, but it concerns me the fact that the two major stock exchanges in Iraq actually shut down. They closed their operations. In addition to obviously the stock exchanges. There are two major stock exchanges there that were shut down, just closed. Yes. In addition to the 8 more banks, because of the scrutiny from the U.S. and all that we already know. But you got 8 more banks that cannot, they're not allowed to participate in bids for U.S. dollars. In addition to that, 2 major stock exchanges. How do you think that is all going to affect RV? I mean, something is going on internally for 2 major stock exchanges to shut down.
That's right. It's called ending the corruption. That's exactly what's going on. They're getting rid of the bad players. So I would turn that around completely and say that's good news.
Okay.
And I don't think it's more complicated than that. I understand why it's concerning you, but remember, corruption in Iraq has been just prevalent ever since Saddam got involved. And that guy was a poison pill. And remember, there's also the pro-Iranian individuals in Iraq, and then there is the regular garden variety thieves that are just trying to take advantage, whether they're arbitraging between the official rate and the street rate. I mean, they got, these criminals have, wherever money is, bad players are attracted to it. So what's going on? These are part of the reforms of Soudani, too. He's just shutting them down. He's not putting up with it. He's saying he's cleaning the CBI floor. He's completing the monetary reform. They're doing all the bank and financial reforms. They're doing all the international contracts, and they're getting rid of the bad players in the country. They have direct control of that. So, in my view, this is good news.
Okay, so the 2 major stock exchanges, they were also in the game, like the banks that were, obviously taking advantage of the exchanges and all the corruption citing and moving dollars, I guess, towards Iran. That's pretty much all related.
Yeah, and of course, Iran's not going to stop. I mean, I've gotten into who the Iranian mullahs are. They're fifth imamers. They are white, and they look down on their black and brown Islamic brethren. Of course, they hate the United States. They hate capitalism. They're just a bad bunch, and they're going to continue to do the things that they're doing. Unfortunately, Trump had put the clamps on them, and Biden, for whatever reason, just gave him a second life. So, they were basically hanging by a thread, and then Biden, resuscitated them. I have my own ideas why, but that's not important. The fact is that that's what's happened, and it's unfortunate. But again, closing the banks and shutting down the exchange because there's some nefarious players involved in it, in my opinion, is a good move, and it's a step in the right direction. Remember, after the monetary reform comes the bank and financial reforms, and so it makes perfect sense that if they're shutting down banks and they're shutting down stock exchange, that's the bank and financial reform.
Okay, good.
All right.
Now, leading to my second question, which is part of that, piggybacking that, is there's something, I don't know if the translation will be exchange control. That's happened in my country, Venezuela, where the government simply arbitrarily decides to take control of the exchange, in this case of the U.S. dollar, limiting everybody and their mother from anybody, not just 8 banks or 17 banks, everybody. Nobody could get dollars unless you're authorized by the government. Total control, total manipulation. Like I said, we lived it for almost 25 years in my country. So the government decides who buys dollars, when, how much, and for what. Do you think if all these U.S. sanctions can lead to Iraq having to have a exchange control with the U.S. dollar? Which obviously they're doing it now, limiting all the players that were able to get them, and now they can. But can it get any worse? Can that influence in any way the RV?
I don't think so. I think what's been going on, the sanctions and all of that, again, I see that as good things. We've been told for 10 years now that they had to resolve the corruption issue. Well, that's what they're doing. So on the one hand, you can't say we cannot reinstate and revalue the currency till we deal with the corruption issue. So then they're dealing with the corruption issue, and people are concerned that's going to affect their revaluation. No, we're dealing with the corruption issue was a prerequisite to the reinstitution and revaluation. My concern is what might happen in this country with this bunch working in Washington. Now with Venezuela, Venezuela's a corrupt nation. They're straight up corrupt. And they have a vested interest in stopping the use of the U.S. dollar in their country because they don't want the U.S. dollar in this country. As a matter of fact, if you've been listening to the news in the last couple of days, they said that a lot of Venezuelan gang members have been released from Venezuelan jails, and they're the ones crossing our southern border. So Venezuela has no love for the United States. So I'm not surprised at what's going on there either.
Yeah. Okay. So in short, there are some discrepancies that I see. For example, you mentioned that the people from Iraq, actually the government from Iraq, government is telling their people to hang in there, that it's almost ready, that their money is going to be revalued. But on the other hand, the deletion of the 3-0 will affect them. They're not going to make any money like we are. If they remove the 3 zeros in country, nothing happen. I mean, they're just going to deal with smaller numbers.
You're confusing the 3 zeros with the value. All right? The dinar right now, 13.10 against the U.S. dollar. You remove the zeros, and then you make the dinar and the dollar basically worth the same amount, so they'll have purchasing power. That's what's happening. The deletion of the zeros limits the number of dinar out there, not the value of the dinar.
Okay.
So,
I understand.
Okay. That help you?
That's clear. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
That's good enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care, Hector. Bye-bye now. Okay, our next caller is area code 312. That's 312. Go ahead. Got to be Les.
Hey, Jim. Yep, this is Les. How you doing, man?
Hanging in there.
All right.
That's good.
I'm doing all right. I'm hanging in there as well. I heard Don earlier. I was surprised to hear his voice again.
Well, he's living large down there in Florida. He didn't have time for us.
Yeah, he invited you. He didn't invite me.
Well, give him a call.
Will do.
Well, what's up there, brother?
So I did a little homework, and I was checking with these investors. And I went to this one place, talked to this guy. I didn't mention anything about dinar, none of the currency. I just talked to him about straight money investing. And the guy tells me that he would need my entire trust because the money is going to be, it's held in trust. So he said he would need the entire trust. Is that
who's he work with?
Say again?
Who's he with? Is he with a bank? Or who is he?
It's a financial firm. They're not a bank. They are, what's the name of this company? They're like Fidelity, but it's a different company. I can't think of the name. But,
all right,
now, Fidelity Invest?
The only thing that you should provide for them and that they require in the bank docs in the end of the very back of the trust, the memorandum of trust, and a couple of other documents, that's all he really needs. I just give him that.
So why would he ask for the entire trust document?
I really don't know, other than you have what's called a self-settled trust. Financial institutions don't like them because they provide a level of control that they're not comfortable with, a level of control for you. An institutional trust is different. An institutional irrevocable trust is one issued by an institution where they are the trustee. You have a trust where a third party's the trustee, which means they have absolutely no control. And the other side of the coin is they won't even know what they're looking at when they see it. Because I get calls from attorneys fairly regularly because they really haven't seen something quite like ours, but that's because ours is a self-settled trust, which has really jazzed up offshore language. I'm having a senior moment here. I can't think. There's a couple of things in our trust that are very, very sophisticated that you might see in a trust, but there's 3 or 4 things that are in this trust. I myself have never seen a trust that has as much in it as this trust. When Trusts Unlimited contacted me to perhaps represent them, and I looked at their trust, not only did I agree to represent them on these calls, I transferred my stuff from the trust that I already had to their trust. So that's part of the problem too. But again, the bank documents, the 3 documents in the back of your trust, that's all that any reputable firm needs to understand everything. In other words, every jot and tittle, it's none of their business. Well, who are
so
the...
this guy's being nosy then?
Huh?
So he's being nosy.
Yes.
Asking for everything.
I would provide him with the bank documents in the back of the trust to say this is standard operating procedure. This provides everything you need to know about the trust. This trust is supposed to be providing me privacy. If he says, well, that's not enough, I'd walk out.
Okay. All right. That's what I was thinking, because I'm believing the guy doesn't believe me. I'm thinking he's thinking my money's dirty.
Well, if he thinks that, you don't want to deal with him anyway. But I would just give him the 3 bank documents. That provides all of the essentials of the trust. The only thing he doesn't have is names and dates and amounts, and that's none of his business.
None of his business. What about the bank statement, where the accounts, where the funds are coming from? Would he need an account or a bank statement, or just a wire transfer? Because he's asking for a bank statement as well.
Well, you may not have a bank statement. You might say we haven't funded the trust yet. There are no bank statements.
But if I had a bank statement, would I be required to submit a bank statement with it?
I would tell him I don't have any. Once again, under the law, you've provided everything that provides the information he needs about your trust. That's it. The only thing that you have not provided by giving him that is the details. Like I said, names, dates, and amounts, and that's none of his business.
None of his business.
You know, when people go to banks to do their exchange, some of the banks are going to give them jazz, and they're going to really need to swallow hard and go Jed Clampett on them and say, look, I got 10 million dinar. This is how it's going to work. The exchanged USD goes into the trust bank account that we'll establish this day in this bank with my trust, or I go across the street. You just, you know. So you're either going to cave on these people, and you're going to get nothing in return. And then you will have lost a lot of benefits because you've assigned those currencies, taken them out of title, put them in that and assigned them to that trust, not anything else. Anything you do post-RV negates what you did pre-RV. Okay, so no guy in a cubicle in his little bow tie is going to tell me to undo what I did, knowing why I did it. I'll just go somewhere else.
Okay.
And by the way, let me mention this one other thing. Last week, I mentioned that I happen to bank with Truist. It used to be SunTrust. Our firm banks with Truist. Our wiring instructions, you send the money through Truist. Well, I was at the bank, and one of the bank managers came to me to talk about currencies. So that right there means that the banks are at least in a position now where they're being told, you know what, there are some international currencies that we either are exchanging or we used to exchange and we stop exchanging that are going to be on the Forex, so we're going to be utilizing those currencies again. So, you know, it's an anecdotal story, but again, I've been dealing at that bank in 15 years, and I have a clear blue sky. Now, they knew what I do. They knew who the firm I work for. You know, I've had conversations here and there over the years. The guy approached me. So if nothing's going on, why would that happen?
Exactly. Cool.
All right.
Thank you much. My regards
yes,
to
sir.
the professor.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Have
Take
a great
care.
day. All right.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye-bye. Well, Les was our last caller for this afternoon. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. If the things that we've discussed are of interest, I certainly hope you will contact us to get our initial no-obligation package. Again, it contains everything you need if you wish to proceed, but you're under no obligation to do so. You can contact us if you have any questions. The package has a lot of information about us, about the currencies, about our trusts. Contact us if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you. There will be no consultation fees. But I strongly suggest you at least get an initial package to understand what you need to do in order to get your affairs in order and shield this wealth from the general public. Our next call is scheduled for next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we'll be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for listening, everyone, and have a great week.
Recorded.